Hello, good morning, and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. You will notice that I'm not at home. I have ventured out. Lockdown is a little bit better. I have brought along with me my snazzy Air United mask in case I have to go into shops, which is compulsory in Scotland just now as we are easing out of lockdown into what we call phase 3. Thanks to Ricky, I have got a place today that sits between Glasgow's link to slavery and Glasgow's link through slavery to the arts. This is a massively impressive building built in the late 18th century for a Thomas Cunningham, who was a tobacco lord. Now, Glasgow was built on the back of tobacco. We had a number of merchants who made the tobacco industry their own, and many a ship left the Clyde, left Glasgow to go across to American states like Virginia, where they had land and they exploited the slaves at the time in order to make a huge amount of money. This townhouse, very impressive it is, in the centre of Glasgow, was built in the late 1770s for Cunningham at the cost at the time, an exorbitant cost of £10,000. And it's also home at the front of one of the most iconic images in Glasgow, which is a statue. More of that soon. However, I came here as well, not just because Ricky had suggested it, but also because during the week in Bristol, where they had torn down, the Black Lives Matter movement had torn down the statue of another famous slaver, Sir Edward Colston, that a local artist had gone in, had got one of the protesters, a lovely young girl, and who had the Black Lives Matter salute as an image, and had created a statue and put that on the plinth that was now vacant. Now, whilst I didn't really agree with the taking and the tearing down of the statue, but it happened, move on, to have an artist respond in such a massively creative and wonderful way, I thought was absolutely fantastic. And on top of that, to use somebody local in order to catch that moment was great. Of course, what happened? The local authority, the local council have gone in and removed it, talking about how they wanted it to be a more democratic process. Well, I can't think of anything more democratic than a protest leading to something more creative in response. And so whilst I didn't like the first one being torn down, I don't like the second one being torn down either. So this week has been an interesting week once again. Politically, we are seeing some odd things happening in America, which would probably be a constant weekly update under the Trump presidency, and it led me to write three pieces for Brad over at Ringside Report, one of which is a warning to Americans about the way in which Joe Biden is currently ahead in the polls. It's not enough for you to be ahead in opinion. You have to be ahead in the vote. Now, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump in 2016 by 3 million votes. But because of the way that the Electoral College is set up in America, much like the House of Commons is set up in the United Kingdom, you need to win significant numbers of states. And there are swing states, particularly in the Midwest, as I understand it, that are going to be major battlegrounds. And resistors need to get their vote out. If you are going to stand in the street, you're going to complain and you're going to be bitter and you're going to find yourself in the middle of some form of physical altercation with the police. If you don't find yourself in a voting booth, it will all be for nothing. Donald Trump needs to be removed in 2020, in November of this year. You've only a few months to achieve it, and you can't sit back in your laurels. And my whole column was about that, giving a couple of examples of people who did exactly that and lost. I also wrote my latest Mr. Trump Goes To, where he sacked his campaign manager and replaced him with someone else in the not-so-oval office in the not-so-white house in Washington, D.C. Enjoy. I know that some of you enjoyed my piece last week, and I'm going to continue with these until Mr. Trump leaves office. Also, I wrote about the Great White Hope, an epithet, a name given to Gerry Cooney that he hated for very good reasons. And on the theme of race, this was something that Don King had stoked up ahead of his 1982 fight with Larry Holmes. Talking of fighting, last night, former twice world title holder at featherweight Scott Harrison returned in a British and Irish Boxing Authority bill behind closed doors in Aberdeen. Now, Scott had some difficulty in his life, ended up behind bars in Spain and then transferred over to Berlin, finished his sentence in Berlin, then came out hoping to get his British Boxing Board of Control licence back, as he believed he had been promised by them, only for them to turn around and say, no, you're not getting it, due to what had been happening, I believe, in his personal life in terms of being in prison. The British and Irish Boxing Authority, BIBA, gave him a licence. He's been sitting waiting to get back in the ring for a wee while, and last night he managed it, a third round knockout of Paul Pierce. Now, there's a lot in the story of Scott Harrison, but he's a Scottish ex-world champion, and he believes he's going to be a world champion again, and under BIBA there's every possibility he actually is, because they sanction fights under different bodies than the British Boxing Board of Control, and it has to be said they have a smaller pool, and there is a likelihood that Scott Harrison could fight for a world title fairly swiftly in comparison to what would normally happen, which is that he would have to go through the ranks of the WBC, WBA, WBO or whoever. However, of course, if Scott continues to progress in the way in which he did last night, I've got no doubt that one of these sanctioning bodies will suddenly turn up and say, do you know what? I think we should give him a shout, and he'll get his chance. Alec Arthur, former world title holder, was not so keen on his old mate getting a chance to be in the ring because Scott Harrison is over 40. And of course, one of the last, in fact the last fight that Gerry Cooney had was against George Foreman, when Foreman came back in 1990 and eventually went on to win a world title. So a lot of things about age and boxing, which of course is a young man's game, and that has been an interesting thing to contemplate, because speaking as a 55-year-old man, the thought of getting the remote control for the television is enough to send me into apoplexy as far as any kind of exercise is concerned. So, writing also this week has seen me do a couple of columns for the Scottish Football Supporters Association, and the call is out: if you love your club, we're looking for your reasons why. I shall be helping in editing and compiling a book looking at individuals who love their club, to be printed so that we raise funds for the work that we're going to be doing in Malawi. So hopefully we're going to get plenty of people who are going to write in about their club, and it doesn't have to just be the Scottish Professional Football League clubs, but junior clubs, amateur clubs, whomsoever. We're looking for people to let us know. So the Talking Boys columns this week, I have been working a little bit around them in terms of looking at the past. I was off for a week and had a couple of weeks to catch up on in terms of the boxing, and we had the BT Sport bill, which was again behind closed doors, the British Telecom studio, where Frank Warren presented a really good bill, which I watched the vast majority of. I can't remember why, but I ended up not watching the last fight, and what a stupid thing that was, because do you know what? That was probably the best of the night. But we did see Paul Kane from Dundee, and I think I mentioned it last week, not managing to wrest the WBO European title away from his opponent. Now, this week we're looking forward to the last, I think, of the bubble in the MGM Grand Las Vegas, and towards Frank Warren's next bill with Joe Joyce, and also the beginning of the hype will start for Eddie Hearn's matchroom bill in his back garden. Some theatre. I also wrote a little blog on the Fringe. It's not on this year, but it's there. We're talking now about looking at online Fringe performances, probably to celebrate the best of the past, but also some new stuff, which I'm more looking forward to. I think in the past I've talked about how it is that the ones who've taken a little bit of a risk in terms of putting their stuff online. It's more impressive to me because it's fairly easy to basically stick up stuff that was really, really good, but I really enjoy the ones who are taking a little bit of a risk in terms of what it is that they want to get opinions on and not just promote themselves. So they're seeing it as an opportunity, not necessarily as some kind of marketing ploy. So I come to a Glasgow landmark, and if anybody knows anything about Glasgow, then they will know about this statue behind me. It is the Duke of Wellington outside the Gallery of Modern Art, which used to be Cunningham's own townhouse, built on the backs of slaves. But in Glasgow's typical tradition, what you see behind me are a couple of traffic cones that never move from there, and any attempt to take them down within 24 hours, there's somebody who may be a little bit worse for wear on the happy juice, making sure that they're back up there. So that's how we do it in Glasgow in terms of statues. We're looking forward to seeing what Bristol will do when they come to replace not just now Sir Edward Colston's statue, but the Black Lives Matter statue that I think was a fitting tribute to those who went down to promote their civic duty. So from me, from this week, civic duties are coming up in America in November. Make sure you exercise them. But for now, it's bye for now. I'll see you next week somewhere else. And do me a favour, subscribe by pressing whatever button it is onto the YouTube channel, and send me an idea of what you would like me to go and do next week or the week after. And remember, keep it clean, and Coventry's too far away. Bye for now.